And we're joined now by no campaigner and Respect Party MP George Galloway. Welcome to the Sunday
Thank you.
Politics here in Edinburgh. Big business, big oil, big banks, the Tories, the Orange Order, all against Scottish independence. You sure you're on the right side?
Yes, because the interests of working people are in staying together. This is a troubled moment in a marriage, a very long marriage, in which some good things and some bad things have been achieved together. And there's no doubt the crockery is being thrown around the house at the minute. But I believe the underlying interests of working people are on working on the relationship rather than divorce. I've been divorced. It's a very messy, acrimonious, bitter affair, and it's particularly bad for the children, and that's why I'm here.
But you talk about working people. It seems many Scots, particularly working people, seem to have concluded that the kind of social democracy they want to create cannot now be done in a UK context. Why shouldn't they have a shot of going it alone in Scotland?
Because the opposite will happen. Separation will cause a race to the bottom in taxation. Alex Salmond's already announced that. He's going to cut the taxes on companies, corporation tax, to 3% below whatever it is in the rest of these islands. And business will only be attracted to come here, a country of 5 million people, if there's low regulation, low public expenditure, low levels of taxation for them. You can't have Scandinavian social democracy on Texan levels of taxation. And the British government, as will be the rest of the UK, will race salmon to the bottom on this. He cuts it by 3, they'll cut it by 4, and so on. And that's why I say whether some people can see it clearly yet or not, the interests of the working people on both sides of the border will be gravely damaged by separation.
Well, let's stick with the interests of the working people. As you know, as well as any, the coalition is implementing both a series of cuts and reforms in welfare. And Labour, Westminster Labour, has only limited plans to reverse any of that. Surely if you want to preserve the welfare state as it is here in Scotland, independence is the way to do that.
No, for the reasons I just explained, I don't believe that. But Ed Miliband will be along in a minute. He'll be along in May. Everybody knows the Tory...
You don't know that.
Well, the polls indicate...
But the polls are only 4 or 5 points ahead. Some are 8, but the average is 4 or 5. I mean, like the referendum, the next general election could be nip and tuck.
I don't myself think that the time of David Cameron as Prime Minister is for much longer. I think there'll be a Labour government in the spring and a Labour government in London and a stronger Scottish Parliament, Super Devo Max, that is now on the table, is the best arrangement for people in this country.
But George Galloway, the people of Scotland surely cannot base a decision on independence on your feeling that Labour might win the next general election.
Well, it isn't my feeling. I think when the Tories were beaten on the bedroom tax last week in the House, it was written all over the faces of the government side, not only that they were headed for defeat, but probably a massive fissure with the breakaway to UKIP and the rest. I think that the race to the bottom that I prophesy will mean that the welfare state will be a distant memory quite soon. The cuts and the run on the Scottish economy here in Edinburgh, the financial services industry will be gravely damaged. A Ministry of Defence jobs in Scotland decimated, probably ended, more or less. It will be a time of cuts and austerity, maybe super austerity in an independent Scotland.
You mentioned defence. What about nuclear weapons? The Tories and Labour will keep them in Westminster. You're against them. Lots of Scots against them. Surely the only way to be rid of them from Scotland is independence.
But you're not rid of them by towing them from the Clyde to the Tyne. Their danger would just be the same. Nuclear explosion doesn't respect even Alex Salmond's national boundaries. And Scotland is committed under Salmond to immediately join NATO, which is bristling with thousands of nuclear weapons and involved in wars way beyond the North Atlantic. So anyone looking for the peace option is going to have to elect a government in Britain as a whole that will get rid of nuclear weapons, get out of military entanglements. Heaven knows we're in one again now. I've been up the whole night till 5 in the morning dealing with some of the consequences, some of the implications of the grave international matter that you opened the show with. Mr. Haynes and the fate of a hostage who's still in their hands, a British hostage who's still in their hands. There are many others. And of course, there are many, many people dying who are neither British nor American. I've somehow been now drawn into this matter. And it showed me again that the world is interdependent. It is absolutely riven with division and hatred, and this is the worst possible time to be opting out of the world to set up a small mini-state on the promises of Alex Salmond of social democracy funded by Texan taxes.
Let's, for the sake of this next question, assume that everything you've just told us is true. Why has your side squandered a 20-point lead?
Well, of course, I'm not running that show,
I understand that.
After Thursday, I'll have a very great deal to say about that, whatever the result.
But I mean, is it not this campaign, the Better Together, is very much a Scottish Labour project, and losing this lead, is that not a condemnation of Scottish Labour?
I think Scottish Labour is potentially on its deathbed, and if the country breaks up, the principal responsibility will be on them. From the Blair era onwards, the Iraq War, the collapse in credibility and confidence in the British state, not just in Scotland, but through Farage and so on in the rest of the country, and the pitiful, absolutely pitiful job that's been made of defending a 300-year-old relationship in this island by the Scottish Labour leadership is really terrible for me to behold, even though I'm no longer one of them. And I don't know how they're going to get out of this deathbed.
Because do you agree that if this referendum is lost by your side, it will be because traditional working-class Labour voters, particularly in the west of Scotland, have abandoned Labour and decided to vote for independence?
Without a doubt, the number of Labour voters intending to vote yes is disturbingly high. Even just months ago in the European Parliament elections, swathes of people who didn't vote SNP are going to nonetheless vote yes on Thursday. That's a grave squandering of a great legacy of Scottish Labour history, which history will decree as unpardonable, unforgivable. Now, if Labour is to get out of its deathbed in Scotland, whatever the result, it's going to have to become Labour again, real Labour again. I'm ready to help them with that. And my goodness, they need help with it.
We'll see if they take your help. But I wonder if it isn't just a failure of Labour in Scotland. As you will know too, people all over Britain are increasingly fed up with the Westminster system. But it's only the Scots who have currently the chance to break free from it. So why shouldn't they?
That's exactly right. They see a parliament of expenses cheats led by Lord Snooty and an Etonian Bullingdon Club elite carrying through austerity for many but not for themselves, and they're repulsed by it. They need change, but you can go backwards and call it change, but it will actually be worse than the situation that you have now.
But a lot of Scots don't buy that. They think it could be better.
Yeah, I could. Well, it could. It's a big gamble. I mean, if I were poised to put our family's life savings on the roulette table in Las Vegas, my wife would not be scaremongering by pointing out to me the potential consequences if I lost. She would not be being negative by telling me that that's my children's money that I'm risking. If I jumped off this roof now, it would certainly change my point of view, but it would be worse than the point of view that I've got now.
But there's another issue here, which is about trust and gamble, because the Scots are being asked to gamble on the Westminster parties, which they're already suspicious of delivering on what Gordon Brown is now calling home rule. Now, on the Daily Politics on Friday, Alistair Darling couldn't even tell me if Ed Balls had signed off on more income tax powers for Scotland. So that's a gamble for the Scots.
I feel that the British state has had such a shake out of all of this that they would be beyond idiots. They would be insane now to risk all of this flaring up again. Because whatever happens, if we win on Thursday, it's going to be narrowly. There will be a severe fissure in Scotland. Great deal of unpleasantness that you and I are already well aware of. That unpleasantness could turn uglier still. It would be dicing with death, playing with fire to let Scottish people down after Thursday if we narrowly win.
But if you narrowly win, and if there are moves to this sort of home rule that Mr. Brown has been talking about, England hasn't spoken yet on this. And whereas England may well not, will probably not want to stop Scotland getting this, they will say, well, what about us? England needs to be cut in on this. What about some home rule for England? That's more complicated. It could delay the whole procedure.
I don't think it delays the whole procedure, but it's a necessary concomitant. You're right.
You think England should have home rule?
Yes, I really do. And I screamed at Scottish Labour MPs going into the lobbies to vote to introduce tuition fees in England when their own constituents weren't going to face it. I told them that this was a constitutional monstrosity. As well as a crime against young people in England, it was a constitutional monstrosity, risking everything. I mean, we're led by idiots, Andrew. Our leaders are not James Bonds, they're Austin Powers.
That might be a reason for voting for independence.
They're Austin Powers. We need to change the leadership, not rip up a 300-year-old marriage.
George Galloway, let's leave it there, but we're going to speak to you again before the end of the programme. It's been one of the longest and hardest fought political campaigns in political history in this country, with Alex